Okay, thanks for meeting today. And any of you that are not here, I will post this so you can watch later on. But I really wanted to meet for this week to kind of talk about Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. I didn't receive any questions via email, but you may end up having some after you look into Chapter 2. Chapter 1 is pretty explicit on your assignment. It is due this Sunday, so make sure you pay attention to that due date. I'm going to kind of click on here and we'll kind of run through it real quick. Chapter 1 just kind of really gives you that introduction of what does explicit systematic reading instruction look like, why do we do it, exactly what skills are needed to be a successful reader. That's when we kind of get into those 5 essentials of reading. We also talk about RTI, which is response to intervention. You will see that a lot in reading in the elementary grades, as well as in some of the older grades. When you get into middle school, high school, it looks a little different in how they structure those types of things. But you may also hear the term MTSS, which is multi-tier system of support. That is also a model of that is RTI. So you may see that as well. Another thing that kind of you need to be thinking about, and the textbook does some job of it, but you may have to think outside of the box, is how can we do sensory with this? So if I am teaching reading, what are some sensory activities that I can do that guide students? You may hear of students learning to write in sand or use shaving cream, kind of those different types of things that aren't just strictly verbal, but we'll also work with learning to read. And then later on chapter, we'll talk about reading and spelling and how they can go hand in hand and shouldn't be taught as independent projects or assignments. Like we don't teach reading and then we teach spelling. They go together. But you do have to make sure you guys are watching these VoiceThread lectures. There are additional information in there that's not in the PowerPoint that may be on your quiz. But it also goes through some more, gives you a little more detail about some of the activities or things that they're doing within the book. I know these chapters are long, and that's why I give you plenty of time to kind of take that information in and digest it and kind of understand what's going on. Couple of videos here to watch, and then you have this the RTI module, which is the reading intervention. So what does reading look like for RTI? So chapter 1 is pretty self-explanatory as far as what your assignments are. Make sure you do the quiz. And then also just thinking about this for my special ed, we always want to teach explicit reading instruction for students with special needs, but all students could go with more explicit instruction. So that's really kind of where this chapter sets us up for that. All right, I'm going to flip back over here, and we're going to talk about chapter 2. Chapter 1 introduces us to the 5 essentials of reading, which is phonological awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. So as we move through this textbook, the textbook takes each of those 5 essentials and it spends a whole chapter on each of those essentials. So chapter 2 is kind of where we get into phonological awareness. Chapter 3 and 4 talk about early and beginning reading skills, which comes into that phonics and brings in some more of the phonological awareness in there as well. And then chapter 5 talks about fluency. Chapter 6 gets into vocabulary, and chapter 7 is comprehension. Now, and these skills do build upon each other. So a student who doesn't have phonological awareness, they're not going to have good fluency. And if they don't have good fluency, that means their vocabulary is going to be weak. They don't have a strong vocabulary, then their comprehension. So they build upon each other. So it's very important that these students have these skills early on. And a lot of these we start teaching even before school in some of those pre-reading activities, or even students when they're just learning to form words and letters. But chapter 2 gets into the phonological awareness, and we're talking about phonemes and things like that. So there is a VoiceThread to make sure that you watch and, or not watch, actually listen to and follow along with the PowerPoint. The big assignment, we do have our phonemes test for this chapter, which is your TK20 assignment, and that is already available on TK20. You will kind of mimic what they do in this YouTube that I have here. This kind of goes over the 44 phonemes and 4 blend sounds that you need to be able to teach the students. So it's very imperative that you can correctly say these phonemes, so whenever you go to teach them, you're not teaching them incorrectly. There are instructions here on exactly how to do it. I do have it set up how I want each slide. So you should only have 6 slides. I don't want a slide for each of the phonemes. It's very cumbersome, and it makes your PowerPoint very long and hard to upload into TK20. So make sure you follow those directions. There is a rubric here, and how I will grade it is you're actually going to create the VoiceThread and post it. But then I'll actually go on TK20 and pull the rubric up and then watch your VoiceThread and grade you via the rubric on TK20. So you'll be able to go back and look at TK20 rubric to see exactly kind of where you were. I'll also just make a comment on your slide that, you know, if you have one incorrect, I suggest you mark do not share with class. That way you don't, if I tell you, you know, how many you have wrong, nobody else has access to go and look at your phonemes test. So make sure, like I said, that's a very important piece. Make sure you create the phonemes test and then submit assignment. Once you've submitted your phonemes test, you'll have a link in VoiceThread. You'll copy that link, put that back on the first slide of your phonemes test, and then submit it to TK20. So you have to actually create your VoiceThread first before you can submit your TK20. And then you have a PALS module to complete, which is peer-assisted learning. And this is how we'll do that in kindergarten and first grade, because that's a lot of times where we're teaching these skills. And then you do have a Chapter 2 quiz. And that's kind of everything we have for Chapter 2. Just make sure that you follow the directions on your phonemes test and you submit that information to TK20. And I would suggest that you click Do Not Share with Class. I'll still be able to see it, but you may not want. If you don't care if other folks see yours, that's fine. Just leave it. But you have that option to not share with the class. Okay, well, that's everything. So I will see you guys for the next module. This one is actually due on the 16th. So if you have any questions before then, please let me know. My office hours, I'm open. You're welcome to come here on campus, meet with me during my office hours. I can meet with you via Zoom, whatever works for you if you have questions on this. But otherwise, we will schedule another meeting for Module 2, and we'll kind of talk about what's going on in Module 2 then. But like I said, Chapter 1 is due this Sunday. The following Sunday, Chapter 2 is due. And then Module 2 will open, and then you'll have 2 chapters for that one. All right, we will talk to you soon. Bye.